Welcome to the Multifamily Zone, where business meets family. We explore what the entrepreneur life looks like from the family perspective. Now here are your hosts, Julia and Gino Barbaro.
Hey everyone, this is Julia Barbaro, host of the Multifamily Zone podcast. I'm here with Jake and Gino, my husband and co-host Gino Barbaro.
Hey, Joel.
Hey, tell me about today, Gino. I'm so excited about this one.
I'm going to be taking a lot of notes on this one because this is a father-daughter duo. Let me read their bio and then we'll jump right into it. Tracy and Keeley Hubbard are the father-daughter duo and managing partners of Hubbard Capital Group, a multifamily real estate investment company. They strategically acquire, own, and operate apartment buildings across the U.S. to provide a strong return to their investing partners. Keeley and Tracy's unique skills have created the perfect match in identifying solid investment opportunities and providing peace of mind to investors from acquisitions to operations and ultimately onto the next multifamily opportunity. Integrity, transparency, and delivering results to investors is at the core of every decision they make. When they aren't touring properties or underwriting deals, you can find them hanging out with the rest of their big, crazy, fun family. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for having us.
So I got to go to Dad first because Dad's older, and I hope he's probably wiser. So why did you get into multifamily? How did you get into the real estate business?
I needed to go ahead and lose the rest of my hair. So that's what I wanted to do, was get into multifamily. Now, it's sort of interesting. I transitioned from multifamily from the financial markets. I've been involved in the financial markets for over 20 years as a trader and an investment fund manager. So about, I'd say 3 years ago, I started transitioning over into multifamily to get into more, hard assets, I would say.
So this is, we normally don't go into business right away, but I've got to pick a bone with you because that must have been a hard thing for you to come to the realization that the financial markets and trading stocks, and that was like, wow, I don't want to call it a Ponzi scheme, but we see what's going on right now. There's no control. You can lose 2,000 points. And I'm not as old as you. I still have a little bit more hair than you. But I remember when I got out of college, Value Line, it was just a different world with stocks and investing. And you could invest for the future. And when there was a shift, you could lose 200 points in a matter of 3 weeks, not in a matter of like 10 minutes. So it's important, everybody, to listen out there on Tracy's story and how he transitioned and why he transitioned, because it's a hard business. Multifamily is an asset. And my wife is probably telling me, stop talking about business right now. But it's really important because he has control. They have control over their financial future. They can buy, they can sell, they can refi, they can raise rents. They have control. They don't have to worry about certain things that are out of their, control. So how did your daughter jump on board with you? How did that progression work?
I'll let her take that part.
Well, this is not our first rodeo in business. Right. So, we have a pretty tight-knit family, and we've done business before together. My dad's a serial entrepreneur since I was a kid. He's been a business owner. And so I just love to follow in his footsteps. And I actually quit my corporate job about 2 years ago. I was VP of sales for a pretty big company and got tired of building somebody else's empire. And we really wanted to build something that we could see a direct impact and benefit for our own family. So I jumped on board.
So what did you learn from Dad from being an entrepreneur all those years? And I'm sure he tinkered, and I'm sure everybody asked you, what does your dad do for a living? And you're probably like, I don't know, because everyone asks my kids that. And that's the $1 million question. I don't have an answer. I'm an educator. I'm an investor. I'm a podcaster. I don't know what the answer is. So what did you learn growing up and having that in your DNA?
Oh, gosh. I think, when you get asked that question, what does your dad do? My answer would be whatever it takes. I'm one of 4 kids and had the best childhood growing up. There were certainly ups and downs in the business, knowing what I know now that I'm older, but I'm so glad and grateful for, having somebody that does whatever it takes, understands, the life of an entrepreneur and taking risk and doing it all, for the sake of your family. So I've learned that from him, and even my own. I've got another, business that I run that you do whatever it takes, and you do have to take some risk, but you'll live a life that that others may not be able to live. They don't have the freedom of time and resources, and so it's a sacrifice, but it's worth it. And you figure out what you're made of.
What did you do? What did you do in the corporate world? What job were you before you left?
I was an executive, so I was VP of sales. I had teams all over the U.S. and internationally, and was traveling 24 days a month. So I had no life.
Oh,
Yeah, it was rough. I
wow.
loved the
Yes.
people I worked with, but it just wasn't sustainable long term.
So what was that conversation that you had with your dad saying, Dad, I want to leave this and I want to go into multifamily and I want to go into business with you? How did that conversation go?
It just kind of organically happened because when I left the corporate world, I wanted to privately coach business owners and salespeople. That's what I love. Like, I love seeing a direct impact on people's income. And at that time, my dad had started looking into multifamily. We started out with a small 6-unit brownstone in Chicago and quickly realized that wasn't going to get us where we wanted to go and wasn't going to help our investors. So we make a good pair. He's the numbers analytical guy, and I love people. So I get the privilege of working with the investors and building the raising team, and it just, it made a good duo. Plus, I make sure I say this on every podcast. I am the favorite child. There's 4 of us.
I want to talk about that. Yeah.
I am the favorite. They won't admit it, but I'm just going to keep putting it out there.
Yeah.
So there's only one child that listens to our podcast. We have 6 kids. The oldest one is 20 years old. So Gabriella, you are our favorite child. The other ones won't hear that. So just putting that out there again.
I want to know about the dynamics of the two of you, because of course there can be challenges in any partnership, but when it's, spousal is one thing, but father-daughter, I feel like there's a lot of feelings that can be hurt. There's a lot more emotions involved. So tell me about, the challenges that you face, how you overcome them, and, just to see that success.
Well, I'll start off on this and then I'll let her take it over. It's sort of interesting because, as she said, this in our first rodeo. I had another business before that. I had 3 of my 4 adult children, and one of them came in part-time because she was still in college, to work together, and 2 of my adult children's spouses were involved in the family business. So we had a lot of,
experience.
We call them come to Jesus meetings. And so it was sort of interesting because the kids, we would have some pretty heated discussions, and I would say, if I was just your boss, you wouldn't say that to me because, I would fire you. No, but they said, but Dad, you're wrong. And so my wife would, be the peacemaker there and usually come in and said, no, Tracy, you're wrong. You need to listen to the kids on this. So it was an interesting process. We learned a lot about ourselves as individuals. And, it's interesting. It's really great to transition, with your children from that stage of, you're the parent and the guardian, and then you become their coach as you go through life. And then at some point in time, it's more of a peer relationship, and but it's great. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
We have a lot of fun now that my parents are my best friends. It's funny because they've lived like literally across the street or just in the same neighborhood for probably the last 5 or 6 years. I'm the only kid that's not married, so they keep following me around everywhere.
Following us.
So the funny thing is, it was a come to Jesus. Did Jesus come to you, or did you go to Jesus? That's the question. So
he saved me from them, I think is what happened.
See, Tracy, my problem when I was working with my dad, my dad passed away back in 2007. I was 8 years old. I went in the restaurant business with him. I worked with him until I was 37 years old. So 30 years of my life, I thought everyone owned the restaurant and went to work with their dad. My problem that I made a mistake with my father was he would not allow me to go work with anybody else. I only worked in his business. And I think that was a big mistake because I would have liked to go work in other kitchens and learn other stuff. But he's like, no, you're working with me. And I think that was just part of the control factor. And I don't regret it, but it was hard for me because I wanted to learn from other people and experience other things. And I don't take anything away from it because I loved working with him ultimately. And I was the oldest sibling. I had another brother who was working with me, and they just got let off like cats and dogs. I got along really well with my dad because I deferred to him a lot. But it was one of those things where you know how to roast pepper. Your roasted potatoes don't look good until the customers are like, this is great. Then he let me go, right? Then he says, it's okay. So when was your come to Jesus moment like, wow, my daughter can actually do this and I can let her go? Because there's a lot of trust factor. You've been doing something for 30 years. You've been in business for your whole entire life. And all of a sudden you're putting up capital. You're putting up friends and families and other people's capital. And it's like, there's got to be a trust factor there with your daughter. And for my father, it was ultimately when customers said, his food's good, leave him alone. What was yours?
Well, I would say in one of our last businesses we had, when I had all the siblings in there, and it's sort of interesting because we brought them all in there, and we had these preconceived ideas of what everybody's skill sets were, and everybody was in the wrong place. You know, it's what we thought or what they wanted to do, but doesn't mean that's where your skill set is.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to figure that part out first. And Keeley was very, I won't say resistant, but I would say she didn't want to step out in really what her gifting was to do that. And my son and basically it was the sales end of it. And my son was in the sales end of it. He's much like I am, very analytical, very engineering type, and somewhat sales averse. So he sat here and said, Dad, and this, I guess, is sort of interesting that he used this term back now. He goes, after what's happened, he goes, Dad, you got Kobe Bryant on the bench. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, Keeley, this is her gifting. You need to put her in. And this is what but she was a little bit resistant to that until my wife, who's got some background in sales, and she's very personable. That's where Keeley gets a lot of that. And so we put her out there, and she set records and became a star in that. And so that's when I recognized her gifting in that area. So, and then once we sold that business, we got out of that business, and then we transitioned. Everybody pretty much went their own separate ways, which, by the way, that was a good time for everybody to find out what they were good at versus what we thought everybody was good at. And it was great. Everybody has their own individual talents, because you can't shoehorn all your kids into, they're all going to be entrepreneurs. Well, they're not. So that's just, but it's good. Everybody, as long as they're happy and fulfilled, that's what really matters. And if they want to make money, they just invest in real estate. So, but that's how it works. So after we left and everybody was going their own separate ways, and I was doing the real estate thing, I realized real quick it takes quite a team to do, especially syndications. And I'm not talking about your attorneys and accountants. I mean, it's just a team of people on board that has to be able to, investor relations, raising money, websites, all this kind of social media, all these kind of things. And Keeley was in a transition time at that. She left her corporate job and was going to be setting up her own company. And I was sitting there thinking, gosh, I really wish she would come and work with me, because I could use her. I mean, 'cause she's got skill sets that I cannot come close to doing and can't touch. And I said, I really could use her, and she could be a valuable asset to me. So that's when I talked to my wife about it. She goes, you ought to ask her. You ought to ask her before she goes off down another path. And so that's sort of how it happened.
Wow, I forgot the question that answer the question that I answered. So let me ask Keeley. That took me off track, because it's such a nice story about people, systems, and culture, and putting the right butts in the right seats, even if they're your kids. And for me, I could see that if one of my children isn't living up to what I think they are, or to what I want them to do, that might be really difficult for a father, and say, boy, I want, for instance, my daughter Veronica, she's so introverted. I love for her to be a salesperson, but maybe she's not the salesperson. Maybe she's more the analytical type. So how do you take away that projection from projecting what you want to, because it's easy said than done. You can say it in a podcast, but how does that work? Because that's got to be really tough, because I could see my wanting all my kids to be entrepreneurs, and they're not going to be. So how did you work through that?
I let them work through it sort of themselves and let them try it. And even though it may be a little scary, go ahead and let them try, and maybe push them in some areas. Say, okay, well, that probably wasn't a good idea, but there's nothing wrong with the experience of learning that isn't what I really want to do. And it's what I told my kids all along. And it comes from my financial background. You got to do what you love and what you're passionate about. And if it's teaching, then teach, but here's the thing about it. The way the world is set up right now doesn't mean you can make a lot of money and sustain the kind of lifestyle you want, even if you have a passion for that. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, even if it's volunteering in third world countries, that's fantastic, but you still got to live. So what you do is you become a smart person and learn how to invest, and maybe you use that to sustain yourself and to live off of, so you can go do whatever you're passionate about. So, and that's sort of like, not everybody has to be that entrepreneur, but you do have to understand. So I try to educate them financially, so that they had the financial freedom to go do what they had a passion for. So,
Keeley, I hear you. Keeley, what would you say about that? It's so important what your dad just said.
I think it's so true. You've got to figure out what you're good at. When he said I was resistant to sales, I was scared. I was scared to have the whole family business on my shoulders. I was afraid, what if I fail? I'm gonna let my whole family down. So I think him and my mom were able to realize that I had that talent. It was just fear that was holding me back. I'm so glad that they, gave me that nudge and that I pushed myself, because it ended up being an incredible career. And vice president of sales before I was 30 of a $220 million company, and that I helped grow, you know, and I wouldn't have gotten there had I not pushed myself and embraced the uncomfortable feeling. So I think it's figuring out, you know, what are you good at and operating in those strengths. I'm not analytical, so I'm never going to be good at, well, maybe I'll be good at underwriting properties, but long term, I'm not going to stick with it because it's not what I want to do. That's him. He's great at that. He's great at finding deals, you know, businesses, building them, all the analytical side of things. So you got to operate in your strength if you really want to be successful long term. That's my opinion on it.
And as a parent too, we, you know, most of the times we could see the kid. We see the strengths in our kids, right? And I'm sure, Tracy, you saw that in her. Maybe she didn't see it, but you did. So it's so helpful as a parent to encourage the kids. How old, doesn't matter how old they are, encourage them and bring that out of them, that what their strength is.
Yeah, I remember when she was a child, and I'm talking probably about 5. Well, I guess she was about 6 years old. She and her older sister, they're very close in age, almost like twins, and they did some modeling for Neiman Marcus. So that first time they dressed him up and put him out on this run to do a runway show. And Keeley, I remember this because we have it on video. She steps out and no one told her there's going to be all these people out there. So to step out and she steps out and they open this door, very nice looking door, you know, that's made for a set. And they open the door and she steps out and they shut the door. Well, she turned around to go back in the door and it's closed. So we're looking at the back of her and she slowly turns around and her eyes, she has big eyes anyway, and they got tripled inside. So it's sort of that visual picture. Okay, sometimes you got to push the child out there and, you know, now she's a professional speaker and speaks in front of hundreds of people and it all works out right. So it all turned out really good.
I'm glad I didn't go back in the door when I was 6.
This is amazing because I'm reading a book right now, and I've mentioned it to a lot of Jake and Gino students in the community. It's called Mindset by Carol Dweck. It really talks about the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And you exhibit the growth mindset, right? Because you're an entrepreneur and you're willing to take those risks and you're willing to push your child out there. And if your child fails, it's not really a failure. The failure would not be going out, open that door. And it's okay to say to your child, hey, you know what? You're not the greatest in that. Let's find something that you are better at. So I think everyone should really focus on that. There's no mistakes. An entrepreneur is going to make mistakes, but we learn from those mistakes and we grow from those mistakes, and we're not judged by those mistakes, I think. And I think that's the awesome part about how you guys have created your relationship and through the years. And I love that. I love the growth mindset. I think too many parents are vicarious and they would just want to tell their kids they're great. There's no such thing as participation trophies. If you're in 5th place, there's 2 things you can do about it. You can either quit at what you're doing or just continue to love it and you like it and try to get better at it and try to become second, because the person who came in first worked hard and they deserve it. It does not take anything away from you, but I think as parents, sometimes we don't want to tell the kids the truth, and it's okay to be tough on them sometimes and say, you know, you're not as good as number 1. Do you want to be number 1? We can do anything you want, but I'm not going to say you're awesome when you're not, because that's not serving the child. That's going to give them mixed messages. And I think that worked really well with you. If you push Keeley to do analytics and really analyze these deals, maybe she wouldn't even be doing multifamily. Maybe she'd hate it. And all of a sudden, I'm not even part of that thing. And actually, with the fixed mindset, you don't even continue to grow. You just shut down and say that fear will stop you because I'm not going to do it. I'm not good enough. That's what you have, that false sense of I'm really smart. When a child is really smart, everyone tells them they're smart. Then all of a sudden they get challenged. They're going to quit because they're not going to want to do it because all of a sudden they come up with this challenge. So I got off on a tangent there. What I wanted to really ask you is, how did you guys learn about multifamily? I mean, who went out and got educated? Because I've been doing it for several years also. I had coaches, I had mentors, I had people that were doing it. Success leaves clues. How did you guys learn about multifamily?
Well, like I said, about 3 years ago, I started looking at diversifying myself out of the financial markets because I just didn't like what I was seeing going on. And I'd been involved in real estate back in the 80s. Now that tells you how old I am. But that was industrial warehousing back then. And I knew I didn't really want to get back into that part of it. So I started looking into the real estate, the different parts of it, you know, single family, commercial, retail, strip centers, all those kind of things. And after doing my research, I realized, okay, I do not want to, multifamily is where I want to be. That was the asset class I wanted to be in. So I set out to start educating myself on it. And I went down the mentor class of paying for mentors and traveling. Much like I educated myself in the financial markets, I find someone who'd be good at it and then try to learn from them. And I had a couple of bad experiences in that area until I found someone that actually was really good at it, and that really sort of got me over the edge.
Mm-hmm. Keeley, let me ask you, could you give the listeners out there, especially the young people who want to work with their parents and who are stubborn and sometimes resilient and think they know it all, give them like a framework or a couple of tips on, say, dad's not that bad. I mean, dad might be a little old school, he might be a little tough, but what can I do to add value to dad? Because ultimately it really is a partnership where you're adding value to your father and your father's adding value to you. And I think if you can look at it from that perspective as an entrepreneur, that's what we ultimately want to do. So what can you do as someone who's young in this relationship to tell the listeners out there?
Yeah, I think, like we mentioned before, operating in your strengths, because a lot of times you're gonna be able to balance each other out, and just taking whatever I can off his plate that I know that I'm good at, so that way he can keep finding deals and keep analyzing deals, and also realizing that it's all hands on deck. Like, there's nothing that I wouldn't do to help him when we're under contract to get a deal over the finish line, because we need everybody working at that point. But one of the biggest lessons that I have learned and continue to value is that he has a lot more wisdom than I do. And you get into your 30s and you think you know it all because you've been through some things, and you've got your own life lessons, but I'll never know as much as he does. And so, that's one of my values for myself in 2020 that's really important to me, is wisdom, and to seek that out. And to especially be able to get that from my father. And I think kids need to realize that even in their 30s, even if you 20s or 30s or 40s, doesn't matter what you've been through, your parents know more. They've been through more. They can give you insight. And if you just stop and listen, you might be able to, prevent yourself from some heartache or mistakes, or, and the advice too, that you've got a built-in, mentor.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, because your dad might know a lot more than you, and I probably know a lot more than my children, but sometimes as quote unquote experts, we can't see outside the box. So as I'm talking to the adults in the room who want to work with their children, listen to your children, because they might be through certain cycles, whether it's social media, the internet, or certain ways of doing business, whether it's different financial products, whatever it may be. Take their advice and listen to them, and get rid of the ego, because us as adults want to be right, and we want to show our children that we're smarter than them. And sometimes they may have solutions that we didn't think of. And it's like, wow, I never thought of that. So as an adult, have an open mind to what your child is, but then do what you want to do. Right? No, I'm just kidding.
Especially on technology.
Yeah, but even the economy has changed. There has been a fundamental change in consumer habits. Like Airbnb 5 years ago wasn't that big. Now all of a sudden you have to know what's going on with demographic shifts. Zipcar, you have Uber Eats, you have all these different types of habits that younger generations are doing that we're not attached to. I mean, I would never do some of the things. I would never co-live with somebody else. But that's what's going on right now. So we might not see that, and we might be skewed to that, whereas someone who's younger is experiencing that goes, Dad, this is the new trend here. So I think we have to be open to our children also. It's a two-way street between parents and children.
Yeah, no, and also I what I really want to hear, and I'm sure the viewers out there want to hear as well, is how do you keep the role? How do you keep the role as father and daughter? And at the same time work together? And, a lot of the people ask us, do you ever turn off business at home? Or going to dinner, getting the family together? Do you turn off business where you're like, all right, let's not talk about it? Because I could tell you, watching my husband with his family in the restaurant, that's all they talked about.
Soul sucking.
Every single holiday.
That's a soul sucking business.
And it would drain them. And I'm like, is there ever a turn off switch where it's like, let's just enjoy each other?
But let me interject for a second. I really, at one point, didn't like the business. Now we do business with the family. We're going to New York next week. We're doing so many different things. We like the business now. So that's a different question. If you really like what you're doing, that might be a different dynamic where I want to talk about the podcast.
Right.
Who are we having on today?
Yeah.
Let's shoot some training videos tomorrow. Are we going to Knoxville to do a tour? So that's different. So from a perspective of you guys liking it, I guess I'd love to hear the answer to that question.
I'll let you take that if you want to.
I think we're probably pretty good about not talking about business all the time, because when we're with the whole family, they don't want to listen to it. So,
Right.
When we all worked in the business together, we
Yeah.
did.
Together. Okay.
Yeah, when we were all in the same business, it was
Mhm.
difficult, and it was all we talked about, thought about,
Mhm.
up all the time at the business. So anyways, we found a good way to separate that now, because they don't want to hear about it all the time, but they
Mhm.
are excited to hear about, what are your wins,
Mhm.
what are the exciting things that are going on, what are some of your challenges. So we are able to turn that off. And I do think, just in the business in general, you asked, how do you maintain your roles of father, daughter, and also, business partners? We're pretty good about, if we're short with each other and maybe snap and we don't mean to,
Mhm.
we're always very quick to say, hey, I'm sorry, I've got a
Mhm.
lot going on. It wasn't about you, it was me, or I was
Mhm.
stressed out. So we always try to
Right.
maintain
Keeley's
the-
better at that than I am. My wife's very good at pointing out my flaw in that
Maybe
area.
it could be a woman thing,
Yeah, probably a woman thing. But, it's like we don't have time to have hiccups.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of things to do and a lot of investor lives to change.
Mhm.
And we want to have fun doing it. So we don't have time to have little petty arguments that don't matter. And sometimes when you're family, it's easier to get into those arguments.
Yeah.
So we try to nip it in the bud as soon as
It sounds like you're very responsible, right? You're responsible for your emotions, for your feelings, and, which is super important in any relationship.
Mhm.
Yes.
Let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsors.
Gino and I are super excited to tell you about the audiobook version of The Honeybee, which was recently released.
The Honeybee tells the story of Noah, a disappointed, disaffected salesman who feels like his life is going nowhere until the day he has a chance encounter with a man named Tom Barnum, the beekeeper. In his charming, down-home way, Tom, the bee man, teaches Noah and his wife Emma how to grow their personal wealth using the lessons he learned from his beekeeping passion.
In the audio version, Gino and I sat down for an exclusive interview after each chapter where we elaborate on the stings we felt throughout the business, the importance of scaling up, and how we've been able to create multiple streams of revenue.
For more information and to get your copy of the audiobook, visit jakeandgino.com/honeybee.
Now, what I want to know is, do either of you do any coaching or any training as far as trying to scale up a business? Have you done it so often that you don't need it? Do you use coaching from outside and try to get someone else's opinion?
For the real estate business, we certainly do. We've got a full-time coach and partner, Mark Kenny, which you guys know very well.
Oh, yes.
Yay.
Yeah. So, similar to what you guys do. I mean, he's helped us immensely. We couldn't have got our first deal done without having that mentor in place. I find a lot of value in self-development. You're talking about the growth mindset book. I went to 4 Tony Robbins events last year, just trying to figure out how can I become the best version of myself? Because I know that if I can do that, I'll be better in business. I'll be better, for my dad.
Sure.
And then also, myself, I'm a sales coach.
Mhm.
So I have high expectations of myself to be able to help, my clients and potential clients that are coming on board. I've got to constantly be growing to be able to give back and provide value to them. So we're big on coaching.
Mhm.
Yes.
You too, Tracy?
Oh, definitely big on getting coaches and mentors helping
So
you.
this is not a knock on your age, but our generation, you're a little older. I didn't really hear it that much 30, 40 years ago. Maybe there was less entrepreneurs. Maybe there was more employees out there, but I don't remember. Tony Robbins was started 30, 40 years ago. I wish I could go to a Robbins event. I'd love to go to one. It's a 5-day. It's a huge commitment. But what do you see the difference has been? I think more people are more into self-development now than they were 20 and 30 years ago.
I think that's a lot of it. I think something also, back when I was an entrepreneur and just trying to learn, say, in the industry, they didn't, of course, the social media wasn't there to key off of. So I would usually find a book that was written by a, quote, expert in the field, and I track him down and call him and say, hey, I'll fly to New York. I want to buy your lunch because I need to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, a lot of people wouldn't do that, but surprisingly, most of those people would love to be talked to about it and love to be reached out to. So that was sort of, I was chasing the mentor that was not even known back. That wasn't even a term I don't think they used back then.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think social media's helped bring that to life.
That's for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. No, so tell me, I want to know how your relationship, just as father-daughter, but even your full, like you're with your mom, with Tracy, your wife, how has that developed even more so? How is that strengthened? I want to know how your relationship really strengthens since you've been working together.
Ours together, or him with my mom? Or
all of you, like all of you together as the family.
My mom is the biggest cheerleader you will ever meet. I mean, she's believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And I think the same thing for my dad. So she's the juice and the fuel that keeps us going. Hey, Mom, if you're listening. And they're high school sweethearts. So they've been together for how many, 43 years now. So they've set a great example to us kids of, you know, what I want, you know, when I eventually find the one and get married. But, you know, I think we've got, this business is a lot less stressful than the one that we were running before. So it's given all of us the opportunity to be together more and to spend more time together. And we actually enjoy talking about it, like you were mentioning. We enjoy discussing business. So I would say it's brought us together. It's brought our relationships closer.
It's sort of like, and we've been through the fire. You know, you've been married as long as I have. You go through some trials, and we went through some really tough financial trials back in the late 90s. We lost everything. And it wasn't one of these, and it was one of the businesses I had, one of the last ones I had that, and I had everything I touched up to that point been, you know, golden, but then that one wasn't. And so we started over from scratch, and I don't mean just on paper. I mean, it was bad. And it was tough. So you go through those kind of things, you realize where everything comes from and how to be solid. And I, you know, back then my kids were very young at that point in time. And my biggest thing as a father was, you know, do you want your kids disappointed in you? So I probably shouldn't go on this place because y'all don't want a bunch of blubbering going on here.
No,
but
it's all good.
this was a time in our lives where I thought, okay, my kids are going to look at me as a failure. And so, and that's not how it was done. You know, the kids, all they cared about is, you know, we just want to make sure we're intact as a family. That's all they care about. They don't care about the country clubs, the you know, memberships, the big houses and cars and boats and all that junk that just goes away. The family unit was what was important to them, and that's what held us through that. And my wife was the solid person there who was my encourager when it was really tough. And my background before that, I'm a former Marine, so we don't have any quit in us. You know, we run until we can't run. Then we walk until we can't walk, and we crawl. We just keep moving forward. So that's what she encouraged me to do that. And when I did get down at some point, it got pretty low. She just said, you know, what are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? Well, she goes, you get up every day and you sit here, but you're not doing anything. This is not the person that I met and married. You need to get up and go be the person who you are. And so, you know, she basically shook me and back into reality. And you need that, someone there. I don't care how strong you are. There will be a point where you need someone to come on beside you. So that's the benefit of working with family, is what it really is.
Definitely.
I mean, I don't know if you can sort of get that through friends, but the family is one who really brings that to the forefront.
I love
That's
that.
beautiful.
That's what we call an accountability partner, right? And you need an accountability partner, whether it's a spouse, a partner, and that's what makes us really, really, I guess, click and really holds us to the fire, holds our feet to the fire. Kelly, would you mind sharing what were the big mistakes or the big learning lessons you made from that business, from losing it all in that business?
Oh, that's what you've done.
What I learned, well,
yeah,
basically they can't eat you. That's what I learned. Is, you know, and everything. And when it boils down to it, you figure out what is valuable and what's not in life. And basically it is relationships and family.
Yeah.
And that you can start over. Not that I wanted to start over or choose that again, but that you can move forward. And you really learn more than anything as far as I hold everything with an open hand, not with a clenched fist, because that's the only way you can let it be taken from you, is also have it put back in your hand.
So Tracy, do you think you were tying your identity to your businesses at that time? Because that's what happened to me at the restaurant. My identity was my business, and I didn't even fail. I just didn't like it anymore. I hated it. So I started to hate my identity, and I wanted to get out of it. So is that one of the things that you saw?
My identity was definitely tied up in businesses. And when I first started into business, it's sort of funny. Every company I bought, and I liked buying companies or finding them they were undervalued, buying them, building them up, and running them. And it's sort of funny. Every one of them I bought, I go in with the thought of, okay, someday I'll turn this over to my son. Well, I've got 3 daughters and 1 son, but what is it about turning your business over to your son? That's old school thinking, number one. So, but my son didn't want to have anything to do with those businesses anyway. But my identity was built into it, and it's sort of funny when I bought those companies. With the idea of buying them, holding them for 20 years, never happened. I didn't own any of them for more than 3 or 4 years. I would get bored with them because the everyday running of them wasn't challenging. And so I would sell them, or someone would come make me an offer and make good money to sell it and go find the next deal. And so my identity was tied up in, okay, doing deals and owning those companies. And that was, that was a problem.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
So what's your 1, 3, and 5-year goals? Because I know you guys have that. I know the way from speaking to you guys. I know you have your quarterly priorities, you have your yearly. So what's exciting for this year, and then 3 years and 5 years?
Go ahead. I'm talking to you.
I think for my sales coaching business, I'm plenty busy with private clients, but I want to be able to move it online because I know I can help a lot more people. I'd love to coach online through a virtual format. So my goal is to get that launched online and have a couple hundred salespeople in there that I can make an immediate impact on. So that's my coaching goals. In the next 3 to 5 years, I would love to find a business that I can buy and turn around. I've kind of been looking for that one. You can't really do an exit plan on a business that's dependent upon you. So I know the sales coaching is my passion and I love it, but I'm also great at building companies. The last company I was with, I helped build it from 40 to 220 million. I know I can do it. I just need to find the right company that I can buy that's struggling, turn it around, and eventually sell it. So that's kind of my, separate business goals, but our real estate goals. I don't know if you want to hit on that.
Well, you can if you want to, or I can, either one.
I'd
say, well, we would like to get probably another 500 to 750 doors this year, under contract and closed, and for this year, and then just going forward. And I try to be a little careful about as far as planning 5 years out.
Yes,
I've made those before, and that never ends up the path I end up going down. And it may be my personality, but I think real estate is something I will do now from here on out in my career. And I'm at a point in time when people say, well, aren't you about ready to retire? Well, no, I don't. That's not even in my vocabulary.
You are retired.
You're very similar to my husband.
So I don't want to stop. I don't want to stop working. I enjoy what I do.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean I want to go punch a clock and, do manual labor either. That's a whole different story. So, but for how we do it, I look to do this for the rest of my life, and maybe impart some of that wisdom and get some other people involved in this, as far as, financial stability, because I've been in the financial markets just trying to just educate people on how to take care of your finances. And there's so many ways to be financially independent and still, like I said, work or do whatever you have a passion for at the same time.
Yes.
No, this has been beautiful. I see so many similarities with your family and ours. I know our kids are from 5 years old to 20, but they're still involved somewhat in the business somewhere. You know what I mean? And it's so beautiful, but it is a challenge on the parents' part because, my husband says, I want this for you as the child. And it's frustrating sometimes because we know what's best for them. Sometimes we just got to let them go, got to let them make mistakes, watch them fall and help them up. And that's really hard as a parent. So all you parents out there, yes, we do all struggle with that. But if we're just, there for them when they're in need, that's what we're there for. And I love working together. I love that my kids are, doing little chores with us, with the company. So I love to see another family like that. So I just want to congratulate you guys.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I think ultimately as parents, we need to provide maybe a happy, safe, home. That's what ultimately we want our children to be able to grow up, make their own decisions, and leave the nest, but ultimately come back whenever they want. That's what
my
I want.
My husband has
children.
Invited them to stay as long as they like.
My son's 17. I said, you can stay till you're married. You can save your money. You can live in the house. You can take my, I don't really, I don't want them to leave because it's a happy household. Yeah. That's what you want. And I think all parents want that.
Right.
I'm feel sorry for the parents that are like, when they're 18, they're out of the house. What'd you have them for? I mean, that, I mean, I know they got to grow up and all, and maybe they go to college or not, but I want my children to stay home with me as long as they feel comfortable. And the longer they're home, it's a great feeling. So I think that's what us as parents really have to focus on, making a safe, happy home and giving them all the tools they need to grow to be an adult, and actually letting them make choices and not let us make choices for them. I think you guys have exhibited that really. And that's a tough thing.
Yeah.
We're always there to tell our kids what to do. Sometimes at some point they've got to make the choices themselves.
Yeah.
I think too, like you mentioned, give them permission to fail, encourage them to fail. The biggest thing for me was my mom and dad saying, go out there and try it. You're going to be great. And if you're not, find something different. And it's okay to not be good at something. At least you can figure out what you love and not be afraid of failure, embrace it.
Yeah. And it also helps you find what you're really good at, find what your passion is. Just, otherwise everyone's telling you what you're good at.
It's sort of like my grandson is playing, Little League ball. And this was last year, and he was not doing very well and was striking out. And so I walked over to the dugout and just called him aside. I said, Noah, you need to know something. We don't care if you strike out. We know you can hit the ball. You've done it before. So just go out there and have fun, because no matter what happens, we still love you, and we think you're the greatest. And so I just went back and sat down. Well, he went back out there and he hit a triple.
Yeah.
And then my son came up to me and goes, Dad, I don't know what you said to him. You really motivated. I just told him that we know he's good no matter what he does, and just quit worrying about it and quit trying. Because every time he swing and miss, he turn around and look behind him at us and stand.
They're looking for our approval, right?
Exactly.
And they have it already. Yeah.
And they've got that unconditional. So
exactly. And if they know that, it all works out, Beautiful.
Tracy and Keeley, where can the listeners get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
Our website's the easiest. It's just hubbardcapitalgroup.com, and my phone number is on the top. So feel free to reach out. We'd love to connect.
That's great. I want to thank you both for being on today, for sharing your story. And it's important because father-daughter relationships, or, adult-child relationships, when they get into business, it can become a little, I don't want to say hairy, but it was tough for me in the beginning, because I wanted approval from my dad, and my dad was giving me the approval already, and I didn't realize that. And, being able to tell your kids that they're good at something and champion them is really important. So I just want to thank the both of you for being on today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this. I think it's very important.
Yeah. Thanks for letting us share our story.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Awesome. Right. Bye.